Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about mindset. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, how do I acquire the mindset of a seasoned front-end developer? Well, you're gonna have to learn a lot of stuff because the mindset of it's the same thing for anyone who wants to be a seasoned something. It really comes down to experience. In front end, it really comes down to how much living have you done, like how many different tools have you tried out, how many approaches do you know and understand, like the benefits and consequences of these are usually the things that I would say. That's how you acquire this sort of stuff. You're basically in a situation where you try to understand your entire ecosystem as much as possible, and then you try to understand the different tools and practices that we apply in order to solve certain problems. That's the main thing that you're gonna should focus on. Usually the way it goes is that the front end quote unquote seniors, the ones that they call front end seniors, are actually they're just they're usually just people who have learned one stack, maybe tried out a few different libraries. They have a very narrow understanding of like the tools that they need, such as like a SPA framework, some way of doing CSS. They might know a little bit of like the HTML semantics, etc., etc., and they might know one like bundler, like Webpack or something like that. But they might not. Most of them don't even know how to configure the thing and how to set it up. They usually Google for that, and that's it, right? But to be really seasoned with this sort of stuff, you sort of have to understand, like really truly understand these different choices that you have in front of you, and what usually is going to work well, what's not going to work so well, and in many cases you need to understand things more in depth so that you can figure out why, for example, some TypeScript configuration isn't working, or why Jest is misbehaving when you're mixing ES6 and ES5, or how you should build your assets in order for them to be served up as static versus how is that going to work server side, and so forth. Like, do you need a CDN? Don't you need a CDN? Like, how do you do image optimization? Like, there are so many different things. And then you have like web APIs. Are you going to go like what choices do you have to make here? Do you understand how like these basic web APIs work? Do you understand how to make a website accessible? Do you understand, like, the list goes on and on, guys. There's quite a lot of diversity in front end, and so I usually tell people is that for front end developers, the main challenge to becoming truly experienced is to understand that there's so much diversity that it's very unlikely, I would say, that you will become a really seasoned front end developer from just the same project stack. In many cases, the best way, I argue at the very least, to get to be a seasoned front-end developer, and I suppose that's true for anybody. I mean, if you look at DevOps, it's the same thing. I wouldn't call anybody a seasoned DevOps person who's just worked with one cloud provider per se, or like one cloud solution or so forth in the same tech stack, because the ecosystem is so diverse that if you take that person and you put them in company number 2, that company's probably going to have a fairly different tech stack, and that basically means that there's going to be some overlap, of course, but if it's widely, like if it's on, because it is on average fairly different, it's very unlikely that from having just one role within one tech stack that you're going to become even if you work for years and years and years, you're probably not going to learn enough. There's like your scope is too narrow, if that makes sense, to get that more holistic understanding of all the ways that you can do different things. So in order for you to acquire that, I think that diversity is the way to go here, and then sort of accepting that this is going to take a lot of time, because specializing in just one stack is actually not going to make you all that much better, in my argument, basically, because the reality is that usually the this people who specialize in something, I'm not going to go as far, because there are talented people who specialize in certain things, but on average the thing I see what people do is that they become quote unquote seniors, or what I don't really consider them senior. When they start calling themselves seniors, it's usually after they've been on one project, or maybe a few projects that uses exactly the same stack, basically the exact same tooling, and then they want to do something where even the slightest thing might be different. Like, it doesn't matter really what it is, and they're basically helpless. Like they because their seniority is not in that they understand frontend. Their seniority is that they know React or Angular or Vue, and that's it. Outside of that box, they're useless. It's like I've said before, people who only use Bootstrap for everything. And I go, okay, cool, then we can't hire you because you actually have to know CSS to work here. I haven't had a candidate that says, oh, I haven't spent a lot of time with CSS, I don't need it because I use Tailwind for everything. And I go, all right, but you're applying for a senior level software position here at this company, and we don't use Tailwind. So how are you going to help our juniors with their CSS if you don't know it? Like, you're useless to the company, because if you have taken the time to learn a framework, not how CSS works. And that's not in my opinion, that's not a senior software developer. That is a person who has learned a way of doing CSS, but not taking the time to actually acquire the core skills to actually understand it fully, and understand that the Tailwind thing, or like Bootstrap or whatever, it's just a layer on top. And for you to acquire true seniority, you will need to know both layers. You will need to understand how to use CSS without something like that, and with something like that. Because you don't really know what you're going to face in each project. And that diversity only comes if you work at it. It's not going to come for free. Usually the reason, well, if you're lucky, it might come for free if you have a really, really weird setup where you might mix a lot of different concepts. But that is my big tip to you, that you have to start somewhere. As a junior, it's very important that you just learn one stack to start off with, because usually your first job is going to be a one stack project. But if you want to become really experienced over time, it's good for you to try out different ways of doing things instead of becoming too comfortable or too complacent in one specific setup, because I promise you that can work sometimes. It's more likely to work for backend developers, because usually the range of things that differ when they jump from one product to another is usually it's a little bit more narrow. Like they're usually they stay a little bit more stable, but frontend is very volatile, extremely volatile. It's the diversity and like the things that can differ can vary quite a lot. So it's very important that you understand the core web technologies and like how all of the setup and like all of these concepts work in a broader sense, if you want to be able to actually maintain the quote-unquote seniority title from product to product. Because otherwise you're just going to sit in an interview with someone like myself, or someone who's like looking for someone who really knows how to do all the things related to frontend, and you're going to look fairly foolish because the frontend is bigger than that one CSS framework that you're using. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you want to get the seasoned frontend developer's mindset, it really comes down to two things: time and diversity. The broader, usually it's better to be a little bit go for width in frontend, because it's such a diverse ecosystem. There's so many things that you need to understand how to do. I usually promote that you start simple and like learn something fairly well to start off with. That's going to get you to a mid-level. Like that's the thing that you should focus on in the beginning. But if you want to become really seasoned, it's very important that you understand that frontend is bigger than any one name your in stack. Or MERN stack, mean stack, call it whatever you want. Like, there is always an ecosystem around one specific SPA framework, for example, but frontend is bigger than that. I'm not saying that you have to learn every framework. I'm saying that basic web standards, basic like how the browser works, basic concepts related to JavaScript, etc., etc. Like these things are important to understand. And then like don't forget that there's quite a lot of stuff to learn just in the management of the source code. Everything from bundlers to transpilers to like build tools, static websites versus server-side rendered versus are you using a backend for front-end solution with a static front-end UI, or like how are you doing all of that stuff? How are you deploying things? How does the pipeline work? All of this sort of stuff comes into play when you want to have that holistic mindset, because everything is connected, right? And so I always give the advice, if you want to be really, really good at whatever you do, it's very important that you understand things from end to end. Because everything that you do, like in your story, ties into things that are going to happen later. Everything, you're not done. The code isn't done until it's out in production. And understanding all the ways that you can build the thing and how to get it out into production is the thing that is going to give you that holistic, really experienced mindset around how to do software development. Because in the later stages of your career, you're going to realize that the choice that you make in something as simple as what CSS framework you use, or what way you like what language syntax are you using for your unit test, or like which test runner are you using, which SPA framework. When you get to that level, you will start to know that choice cascades all the way to how secure or like how well your application is going to work, how productive your onboarding processes are going to look for the different developers, and how that's going to convert into bigger and bigger impacts. That's what you get when you understand things end to end. Have a great day.